Today we're going to break down a really fascinating analysis of the military standoff between the United States and Iran. We're going to look at the strategic moves, those high-stakes calculations, and what the source material tells us could happen as these two powers stand right on the edge of a major conflict.
And really, it all boils down to this one huge question you see on the screen, written in Urdu: how close are the US and Iran to war? I mean, that's the question that's hanging over everything, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, you first have to look at all the pieces being moved around on this global chessboard. We're talking about military assets, troop movements, the whole 9 yards.
So the first big thing the analysis points out is this. The United States is actively ramping up its military presence in the region. But, and this is a really important detail, the buildup isn't quite at the level you'd expect for a full-scale war. And that suggests a much more specific, maybe limited, objective is in the works.
But here's the thing. The US isn't going it alone. As the source material shows us, there's a whole international coalition providing support. And as you can see, we're talking about major European players like France and the UK, plus key regional partners who are offering up crucial logistical and staging help.
And this little detail, it's absolutely crucial. The analysis makes a point of saying the US air power isn't overwhelming. Now, why does that matter? Well, it's a massive signal that the real intention probably isn't a full-blown invasion, but something more like a targeted, limited military strike.
So you've got the military hardware in place, but how does that translate into actual political action? Well, now we have to move from the battlefield to the mind of the decision-maker, where this whole crisis really comes down to a single, high-stakes gamble.
And this right here creates a huge strategic stalemate. On one hand, the analysis says President Trump has a plan for a limited strike. But there's a giant catch. He'll only pull the trigger if he's pretty sure Iran's response will also be limited. But on the other hand, Iran has sent a crystal clear message back. Any attack, no matter how small, will be met with an unlimited response. And that threat, well, it's basically put the brakes on the whole thing.
Of course, decisions this big are never ever made in a bubble. The analysis points out that there are some very powerful forces working behind the scenes, actively trying to influence the final call. And the source material is pretty blunt about this. The quote on the slide translates to, "A powerful lobby is pushing Trump towards a major war." The analysis goes on to identify this as the Israel lobby, and says it's pushing the administration not just for a small strike, but for a much bigger, more decisive war.
Okay, so let's flip the script for a second. How is Iran reacting to all this pressure? Because believe me, they are not just sitting back and passively watching this game unfold.
Right, so in response to the American buildup and all this talk of an attack, Iran is getting its own forces ready. The analysis notes that they are taking extensive military measures to make sure they can actually back up their threat of a massive, widespread retaliation. This all leads us to maybe the most important question of all, which you see on the screen. What would force the US to back down? You know, if the US is all set to strike, what's the one thing Iran's ultimate trump card that could actually stop it all from happening?
And there it is, the bottom line. According to this analysis, the single most powerful factor that would make President Trump pull back from the brink is the belief that a war would lead to heavy American casualties. It seems to be the one cost that might be just too high to pay.
So in the end, we're left with this incredible, high-stakes war of nerves. It's a game of chicken. You've got one side with a plan for a limited attack, and the other promising a devastating, unlimited response. It's an unbelievably delicate and dangerous balance that leaves us with that final, haunting question on the slide. In this war of nerves, who will blink first?